Let's talk about combat shotguns. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Robert Arms. My name's Rob, and I'm the host of this channel. Today, if you can't tell already, we're going to be talking about combat shotguns. This example right here is my Benelli M1014, or as us plebeian civilians call it, the Benelli M4. It's a very expensive combat shotgun that's on the market that's really, really popular with a lot of people. And I threw a poll out there on my YouTube channel a little while ago and had people vote on like what's the most viable combat shotgun. I knew the Benelli M1014 was going to be like the top. So clearly, this is the best example I would love to show off on the channel for this. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. The combat shotgun. Why is it a popular choice for defensive use? So obviously, other than the fact that it's a shotgun.
Shotguns at the right range with the right load will physically remove a chunk of shit.
A lot of the time when you're defending your home, typically you're in a very tightly enclosed space. Shotguns are an amazing tool to be able to use up close, and they're very heavy hitting, and they have a huge variety of ammunition types like buckshot and slug, and you've got some of those crazy ass like flechette rounds and ball bearing rounds and stuff like that. Just anything that you can use up close that doesn't have a super high velocity that can over penetrate through a wall, but you can still use on a human target is a very viable option. The combat shotgun typically can be set up in this kind of configuration, right? I mean, this is obviously a very expensive military semi-automatic shotgun. A lot of people like pump actions too, and I do too. But the biggest reason why I like the semi-auto is because not only does this particular shotgun have a really nice gas system in it, but really a semi-auto shotgun is good for those fast follow-up shots, like bang, bang, bang. You don't have to worry about racking your shotgun or anything of that sort. Now there is the risk of a shell jamming up in there, or the cycling system is being disrupted by like a low powered ammunition and it doesn't cycle through the gas system. There's always threats of that with semi-autos, but for the most part, most of these very high-end semi-automatic shotguns are very reliable. And I mean, there is a reason why they're used by the military and law enforcement. I mean, they are trusted with their lives. So another thing is I don't really like the shotgun setups that have like magazine fed ones, like the Sega 12 or the Chinese shotguns or Turkish ones that you see that are imported into the U.S. that they sell for like dirt cheap. Those shotguns to me don't seem like very viable options because the magazines take up space. They're not always the most reliable from what I've seen, except for I guess the Sega 12 and a few others. But I prefer the traditional magazine tube because you don't have to take up so much space on your person if you have to grab a mag for your shotgun. It only holds like 5 shells probably. And sure, you could get extended ones, but I mean, they take up so much space on your weapon that, it just doesn't. I- Personally, I don't see the use of that. It's easier to just have a bunch of shells on hand or like in a bag or like on your chest rig or on a bandolier or on the like a saddle mount like on the side of your shotgun, where you can quickly grab shells and then load them into your weapon very quickly. So it just, like I said, I don't like the use of magazines for shotguns. I don't see them being a very viable choice most of the time. Before I talk about how I use this thing for training, let me talk about some of the upgrades I did to make this weapon a little more ergonomic for defensive use. So we'll go tip to butt. At the front here, I replaced the magazine tube blocker with a 2-round tube extension made right here in the US. It holds up really well and fits 2 extra shells. That definitely helps with the limited capacity of a shotgun. I also got a rail mount here that's kind of like a universal mount because I didn't want to buy one of those like weird, railed handguards for this thing. I like how the handguard feels on the shotgun. So I preferred to have more of a mount instead, and I found one that's like a universal mount that holds up a little 1,000 lumen streamlight that works really well, especially at night, which is exactly what you really need it for during a time when typically crimes more often happen. Definitely need to have that kind of visibility at night in case somebody breaks into your house and you can't see nothing. Guns are pretty useless if you can't really see with them, so you definitely need a light mounted on your shotgun, especially for a defensive one. So going over here to the optic mount, this is the EOTech 552. It's a very heavy duty optic. Military, uses AA batteries. I mean, I love using the EOTech, very iconic optic, and holds up really well in the shotgun. Makes it feel a little heavier though, but I mean, for the most part, for defensive use, I'm not worried about, running around with my shotgun. Really, it's a defensive tool. That's all it is, right? And it's not really going anywhere outside of the home. So this definitely holds up really well. And to the side of it, I've got a saddle mount with a bunch of slugs there. I'll explain later about why I set it up like that. And for the buttstock, I got an American-made shortened tactical stock with the pistol grip. Originally, the Benelli one had a much longer length of pull, and it didn't fit up well on me at all. And I don't really have the money to get an adjustable stock for this thing, so I had to kind of meet myself in the middle and get a shortened tactical stock. So either way, I think I really like the design. I like the setup. It works for me, and it checks all of my boxes as to how a combat shotgun should ideally be set up. So how exactly do I train with a shotgun like this, right? So traditionally, the kind of drills that I perform is more focused on manipulating the action. Shotguns like this are not like your typical ARs where like you have very simple fire controls. I mean, they're placed in different areas of the weapon, and the safety is not a traditional flip like an AR. It's always usually cross bolt, so that could be a little cumbersome when you're having to shoot, reload, and then manipulate your safety at speed. So that's exactly what you really need to train for. So I like to do a lot of emergency reloading on this shotgun. Limited capacity is a big deal when it comes to using shotguns. That's why a lot of people like to use rifles instead. But because we're using a shotgun, we need to prepare for the idea that if you use up all your shells in your shotgun or somehow you miss your targets and you need to reload quickly, that's a huge concern. So emergency reloading is a very useful, viable training apparatus, right? So with the side saddle mount and why I have these all loaded with slug is that if I were to use up my buckshot rounds and say I run out of ammunition or my target is more, you know, at a much farther distance than a traditional buckshot would be ideal for, I like to have the ability to grab a slug out of my side saddle and be able to throw it into the chamber of this shotgun, or at least load it somewhere in my magazine tube so that at some point whenever I go for those follow-up shots, the next shell is going to be a ranged shell, so that way I can be able to impact my target at the farther distance that I desire. At least in my head, that's how it would work. In reality, you can never be prepared for such a crazy ass scenario of even having to actually use your weapon for defense. But that's just kind of an idea that I felt like I could definitely train with, and that's what I kind of did with the emergency reloads. I drew shells from my side saddle and threw them in my chamber, closed the bolt, and fired off the shell as quickly as possible. So other than training with the manual of arms for a shotgun like this, what else is important? Handling. For one, this overall length for this firearm to be used up close is huge. And on top of that, it kicks like a mule. So, what's an ideal way that I've seen a lot of people use shotguns like this up close, right? Because we don't have the correct kind of barrel length, we're kind of forced to have to use a very long barreled weapon for a situation where we need it up close, especially when you're clearing doorways in your own home. Traditionally, I've seen guys like lean the stock, whether it's traditional or pistol grip like this one, over their shoulder and keeping a tight grip on your handguard and your pistol grip or whatever stock you're using gives you a very ideal set of handling to be able to mitigate recoil up close while also being able to work your way around corners, holding doorways. This seems to be the more ideal method that I've seen people use. It's a good way to train with the shotguns as well, to be able to shoot up close and kind of aim almost with your barrel instead of your optic. Ideally, you want to always aim with your optic no matter what. But if you had to, and the target is so close that like the odds of you missing are really low. Handling your shotgun in this position definitely seems like a very practical way of being able to use it. Anyway, that's kind of all I got to talk about today. I've got some pretty interesting projects coming up soon that I want to show off on the channel later. But in the meantime, I was out and about doing some training with the shotgun. I figure, now's a good opportunity to talk about that kind of stuff. So if you like the video, leave a like, share, comment, and check out my Instagram profile at Robert Arms Official for any updates regarding the channel. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, stay safe, and I hope to see y'all in the next video.